Last year, America's collective credit card debt swelled to more than $1 trillion. Median U.S. credit card debt was higher than any other country in the world, nearly $6,000 per household. Yet, a new survey finds that many Americans want to reduce personal debt and feel optimistic that they can do it. Okay, joining us to give his insights into how we can all save money and what to do about credit card debt is Anthony Chan, former Chief Economist at JPMorgan Chase Co. Anthony, good to see you again, my friend. Thank you so much. Now,
good to be here with you, Sean.
Whether it's emergency expenses or just trying to make ends meet, as we just heard, more and more Americans are saddled with growing credit card debt. How did it get this bad, and what does it tell you the state of the economy is right now?
Well, I think it tells you that there's always a lot of pent-up demand out there, but these credit cards have an average interest rate of close to 20%. And when you consider what that rate is relative to the inflation rate or relative to regular interest rates, it's pretty high. So the first strategy that anybody should undertake is to try to minimize how much spending you do if you don't have enough money to pay that debt. So that means saving in different areas, maybe subscriptions that you're not using or purchases of clothing that you really don't need. Just cut back on those things. But that's just the first step, Sean. There's other steps. And that is to look at where you can invest that money or save it to earn higher rates of return.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it, though, talking about the interest rates that these credit cards punish people with. Let's put this in perspective. With incredibly high interest rates on credit card debt, say, take a looking at the average debt now. If one made the minimum payment on $6,300, which is the average for someone who does have it, it would take you 20 years to pay off that debt, making the minimum payment, and cost you an additional $10,000 or more. So obviously getting it to 0% if you can for the 21 months we heard about. What can we do about people living beyond their means? I mean, that's just a time-honored tradition here in the U.S.
That is a time-honored tradition, but it's something that has to stop. Keep in mind that inflation is growing. Right now, if you look at personal consumption deflator index, that's the Federal Reserve's favorite inflation indicator, 2.4%. So if inflation is only rising by that amount and you're paying 20% on an interest on a credit card, that's insane. So you want to minimize, not to say that some expenditures have to take place and maybe you absolutely need them. It's okay. But anything that is not absolutely essential should not be put on a credit card. And if you do put things on a credit card, make sure that you have money at the end of the month or so to be able to pay that, so you're not stuck with those high interest rates. There are many opportunities with banks. If you look at bank CDs for a year, you could earn 4.5% on a bank CD. That's not bad. If you could put it into a 1-year Treasury note, guaranteed by the U.S. government, you can get right now something in the neighborhood of about over 4%. So again, there are many opportunities where you can earn money in excess of the inflation rate. So why allow yourself to borrow all this money and pay 20% interest when you should be saving a little bit? And by the way, when you do that, you can earn monies above the inflation rate.
Yeah. Okay. And on the heels of Biden leaving the White House, Trump coming in, many Americans right now say they feel optimistic about their financial future. What do you make of this? Is there a disconnect between debt and this growing optimism?
Well, I think the reason for the optimism is certainly the expectation that interest rates are gonna come down, expectation that somehow taxes are going to come down. You've heard a lot of promises during the campaign that taxes will come down. My suspicion is that they will come down, or perhaps the tax cuts of 2017 will be extended. But a lot of the other promises, it's not clear, Sean, whether those things will take place. But nonetheless, there's optimism. And by the way, it's not just consumers.
Yeah.
If you look at CFOs and you look at those surveys, they've gone up. If you look at consumer confidence, they've gone up. Whether you look at daily consumer confidence, or you look at monthly ones, they're all starting to rise because there were so many promises during the campaign. The expectation is that a lot of that stuff is going to happen. And by the way, Look at the equity market. If you look at the stock market for 2024, you saw that the S&P 500 gave you a rate of return of 23.3%. That's more than twice the historical average. So
Yeah.
there's optimism everywhere, including in the financial markets.
Let's not mention Bitcoin, which went up about $40,000 after Trump won. But let's talk about what can be learned from other nations, especially if you look at China. The amount of people, the amount of money that people just put in savings, no matter what kind of debt they have. So what can the United States learn from these other nations, especially when it comes to credit card debt?
Well, one of the things we can learn is that you can save even if you make less money. And I've been to China over 30 times, and every time I go there, people talk about the high savings rate. But Sean, before you get carried away with that, our safety net in the United States, it's a lot deeper and a lot wider than it is in China, but they're trying to widen that safety net so that there's more consumer spending. But because we have that wider safety net, expectation that if you slip, that somehow the government will bail you out, people are willing to overspend. That's not the case in countries like China. And by the way, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You don't want people overspending and end up paying a 20% interest on a credit card anyway.
Okay, my friend. Always good stuff. Anthony Chan, great to see you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.